Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Today, we have an incredible opportunity of learning from an expert in the field of data and analytics. Shachar has almost 20 years of experience in data and analytics leadership. He has built and led several teams in startup companies such as WorldRemit and large companies such as PayPal and Meta. Currently, he's a data advisor consulting individuals and companies in their data journey. Let's welcome Shachar with a round of applause, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So thank you so much for being with me today. I really appreciate it. I'm very happy to see so many people who want to learn about career growth. It's actually interesting because when people think about growing and developing in their career, they often think about things like learning SQL, learning Python, and these kind of things. And people don't enough spend time thinking about their career journey, their goals, and how they want to grow, and that sort of stuff. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. And for me, success will be if I want to show you a couple of different ways you can think about career, about growth, about your journey, and success means that if you take away one or two things from this and manage to implement that in your life, I think that will be an amazing achievement for all of us. This is all based on frameworks and ideas that I've used myself for my own career, as well as things that I've been using with my teams over the years. And so this is all, as far as I'm concerned, good ideas to think about. So I'll very briefly introduce myself. I'll talk about some theoretical ideas, and then I'll try to share some stories, as many as time allows us. And we'll get to questions in the end if we have time. If not, you can find me later at the break. So very briefly about me, my name is Shachar. I've been in data and leadership for the past 20 years. I started my career as a DBA and very quickly transitioned to a team lead position. And since then, I've always been in data and leadership positions in different organizations, from smaller companies and startups all the way to bigger companies such as PayPal and Facebook, or Meta, I should say. At Meta, I was the London data engineering site lead. I was the first and only data engineering manager in London when I joined, and I've built and grown this function from 4 data engineers when I started to more than 200 at the peak. I worked on a small portfolio of products in ads and business platform with a revenue run rate of $7 billion a year, supporting their data. And in my last role, I was director of trust and safety problems for all the trust and safety problems on Facebook, Instagram, and Messenger. In my spare time, I love spending time with my family. I love cooking. I love baking. I fly airplanes and helicopters recreationally. And since leaving Facebook in August, I've turned to a data advisor. That's what I do now. I started my own company. I work alone, and I help companies find paths to success with their data. I advise to data startups and startups that build tools and technologies for data people, and I support individuals boosting their career growth, as I've done over the past 20 years. Okay, so let's talk about some theory, and the first thing I want to talk about is direction and choosing direction in your career, which I think is a very important principle that a lot of people just don't think about too much, especially very early in your career when you have so many options and you don't really know what is it that you want to do. Do you want to be a data engineer, an analyst, or a data scientist? And everything seems exciting and everything is confusing. So I wanted to give maybe some ideas or ways to think about your direction. I really like this scene from Alice in Wonderland. I don't know how many of you know this. When Alice meets the cat and she asks him, "Where do I need to go?" And the cat says, "Well, it depends on where you want to get to." And she says, "I don't know." So the cat says, "Well, it doesn't matter where you go." And Alice says, "Yes, but I want to get somewhere." And the cat says, "Well, if you go long enough, you will get somewhere," right? And I think this sort of idea is very applicable to a lot of people's careers that I've seen over the past 20 years. And I think that career is all about choosing and setting a direction, right? If we think of an airplane taking off from London Heathrow flying, heading 315 for 5,400 miles, they'll eventually get to San Francisco. If you take off from exactly the same location heading 225, you will end up in Brasilia for the same distance, right? So the direction you take matters, and I think it's also applicable for our careers, because if I think about the different roles of data, in the end there's a lot of different skills and a lot of different things you can learn in data, and I think that every role is essentially just a combination of some of them, right? So you would expect a data engineer to be very proficient in building pipelines, in managing databases, etc. You don't necessarily expect them to be very proficient in stats. And when I think of analysts or data scientists, I expect them to be more proficient in stats, in business insights, in storytelling, in data visualization. So I think that choosing a direction and sticking with it is quite important, especially in the beginning. And the reason is important is if we go back to our previous analogy, the longer you go down a certain path, the more difficult it is to actually make correction and the more costly it is to make corrections, right? So if you think, okay, I'm going to be an analyst, 2 years later, you change to a data engineer, you stick with it and you keep going, you haven't lost much. But if you've been an analyst for 15 years and then you think, okay, now I actually want to be a data engineer, the distance between where you are and where you want to be is much bigger at that point, and it's becoming more difficult to change. So that's principle number one, like in career, choosing direction, sticking with it, especially early on, is a very good idea. And when you keep zigzagging and moving from one place to the other, it becomes very costly for your career. The other idea I wanted to share with you is change. And a lot of people, talk about change, think about change, and change is very important in our career. First of all, what is a change, right? So change is something that we need to do all the time. We maybe take on another project or expand our scope. Maybe we move to a different team or a different role within our company, move to another company altogether, or maybe even just take some responsibilities outside our day-to-day jobs, like side hustles, side gigs, mentoring people, contributing to open source projects. But each one of these things is a change. And change is important because that's how we grow, right? That's essentially how we, how we refuel our career and make sure that we're still learning, still satisfied, and so on. And there are many factors that impact the need to make a change, like your relationships with the people you work with, your levels of enjoyment in your current role, the ability to learn, your ceiling, etc., etc. So all of these things will basically impact the need to change. But what I've seen over the years is that people are very confused about when to do that. So unless something is severely broken, people sometimes are reluctant to make change, or sometimes people change too quickly and they think that they need to move role every 1 year, or they get bored too quickly, and so on. There are also a lot of myths around change, right? A lot of people saying you have to stay for at least 1 to 2 years in a role, or staying too long is not good for your career, taking a break is not good for your career, I just started a role, I don't like it, but I have to stay. Or even job hopping, and people that talk about the fact that the only way to grow your career and grow your salary is by job hopping and changing job every year, and you see a lot of people talk about that. So I just wanted to offer a quick framework that I use to think about career changes, and for me, essentially every role is an S-curve, and it's got 3 stages to it. There's the beginning stage, there's the growth stage, and then there's the stage where it starts plateauing or it becoming flat. So in the beginning stage, everything is new. You're still learning every day. Everything is exciting. Most of the people around you are strangers. You're still trying to figure out the very basic concepts that you need to be able to do your job. You're still adjusting. You're still learning the team culture and so on and so forth. So everything is that's what the beginning looks like. But then at some point you're starting to hit that growth phase where you're starting to understand the important concepts of your job, and you're developing a good sense for how to approach things. You may not know how to do everything, but you kind of know how to approach it, how to do it. You're starting to begin to have good relationships with the team and the people around you, and you feel like you're just growing a lot every single day. You just feel the growth, right? We've all been there. And then at some point, it starts plateauing and work is generally becoming easy. We don't encounter too many novel problems, right? Everything feels like it's more of the same. We feel established in the team. A lot of people come to ask us questions. We might be one of the more established people on the team. And there's just this feeling that it gets boring and we don't learn too many new things and growth is basically slowing down. So when should you change? So if we look at this S-curve, I would like to show you 3 different scenarios, right? The first one is changing too early. This is what I call too early, when you just starting to hit that growth phase, you just finish the beginning phase and you just move on, maybe after 6 months, 1 year, like it really depends, but this is quite a quick change. The second scenario is when you change on the right time, exactly when it starts plateauing, so you've gained all the growth that you could have gained from this role, and now you're moving to the next one, or moving company or taking on another project. And the last one is moving too late. So you've already plateaued and you stay flat for a while, and only then you change. And if we look at a certain point in time and we compare these 3 curves, you can actually see how much growth you're missing if you don't change on time, right? If you change too early, you're missing out on the growth that you should have had or you could have had. And if you change too late, then you're staying a little bit flat for a while and you're basically delaying a little bit of the growth. So you really want to start changing just when it becomes boring, just when it starts flattening out, just when you're starting to feel comfortable. I think if you never feel comfortable in your career, that's usually a good sign. It means that you're sort of pushing yourself and you're always challenging yourself. And I actually think that if you look at it over career, because this was just one curve, but if you start looking at these changes over time, over multiple years, this gap just becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. So if you're one of these people that always change too early or always change too late and stay in a job for way, way too late, you're missing out on quite a lot of growth. So how do I know, right? Like, this is a nice theoretical model. It kind of makes sense, but how do I know? Is a very fair question. And I think that first of all, I want to be clear that there's also other factors that impact the need to change or not to change. For example, if you have a bad manager, the company is not doing very well, maybe you're in a very toxic environment and these kind of things, you may need to change too early, and that's okay. Don't just say, oh, I'm in this environment and I don't want to change because Shachar told me I have to wait for this to plateau. Or the other way around, like sometimes we have personal circumstances. You're expecting a baby or some medical conditions or whatever, and it's okay to be flat for a while. It's okay for work to be very comfortable, because that's not the thing you need to be most worried about right now, and there are other things going on that need your attention, and that's fine. And again, this is not a scientific model. There's not like exact timing. I cannot give you a formula or a specific number, but just look for these signals. And I think that we all kind of know and feel those signals and recognize them. And if you can think of any role you've had throughout your career, you can kind of think about these 3 phases and relate to them in a way. So just recognize that when you're thinking about your career and about moves. I see a lot of people who make the mistakes of just get bored too quickly and move too fast and miss out on this growth, or staying in comfort zone and just getting stuck. So think about those things. Cool, let's talk about mentors. Just a show of hands very quickly, how many people in this room have a mentor? When I say mentor, I don't mean your manager. I mean somebody who is like a mentor and that you've established this relationship officially, you set goals and that sort of stuff. This is very, very cool. Look around. This is great. Amazing. Thank you. So what are mentors? I think this is something that not enough people think about in their career, and how important that is to accelerate our growth. Everybody have their own shape, right? If we think of the different skills that we can have and the different things that we could be doing, then this may be one person and this may be one of somebody else, and different people have their own shape. And I think that's quite important, because there are people who are much, much better than me at certain things, and there are certain things that I may be much better than them. And we sort of complement each other. And essentially, mentors are people that have experience and have strengths in areas that you may not have, or areas where you need to or want to develop. They care about you, they care about your growth, and they're willing to help you. And the way they help is by giving you feedback and advice, and that's really, really important. They don't do your work for you. They're not there to protect you from things or to they just show and reflect things back for you. And a lot of people ask me, wait, but that's what my manager does, right? Like, why do I need to have a mentor if I have a manager? And I think that that's a valid question. And by the way, some managers are amazing, and I was personally lucky to have a lot of great managers in my career that I've learned a lot from. But there's some differences between the relationship of a manager and an employee to a mentor and a mentee, in that mentors are, first of all, very often removed from the situation. So your manager might be part of the same situation, right? They're part of the same dynamics that you have with that other team that you're struggling with, or they may not, they still think about things in the same way you do, while mentor is removed from the situation and might be a little bit more objective. The other thing is that mentors are 100% on your side and they optimize for you, while your manager might have other considerations as well in mind. Sometimes they need to balance between different things, and they may not necessarily always choose the right thing, the best thing for you, so to speak. Mentors can show you the things that you don't see, right? They don't do it for you. They don't say, okay, I got it, don't worry, I'll fix it for you. They just show it to you. They put a mirror in front of you and they say, okay, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm hearing, I'm just reflecting it back to you because I think that's important. And that's how they teach you. And the accountability is 100% on you. So it puts the responsibility, and this is where I think the most important thing, most important difference, I think that I see a lot of people who get stuck in their careers because they sort of expect their managers to solve their problems for them, or they blame their managers for their situation, or generally people around them. And with the mentor, you just don't have that option, right? The mentor can tell you, look, I think you're not doing this, I'm just telling you that because I care about you. And now you have to do something with it, it's yours, you just deal with it. So that relationship is really, really important. There's different types of mentorship. There are formal, informal, paid, unpaid. I think that formal mentorship, in my mind, is better than informal, right? You can always find a person you can learn a lot from and just have regular check-ins with them every once in a while and try to learn from them that way. But if you actually formalize that relationship and say, hey, are you willing to be my mentor, and set up goals together and track them, and it makes it a lot more effective. So if you can make it formal, I think you might get a little bit more from that relationship. And also, there are people who are willing to mentor you for free, maybe people who are friends or work in your company and that sort of stuff. There are some mentors who might charge you money. I paid a lot of money throughout my career for mentors, and I think that every time I did it, it must have been the best investment I've made because I've invested in myself and I've grown. And I see a lot of people who just don't do that, and that's perfectly fine, by the way, and I'm not judging. But what I would say is think about how much you spend on vacations, for example, and holidays. And I think, and I'm not saying this is not important, I'm just saying that sometimes I see people spend a lot of money on other things, and when it comes to their own personal growth, they're very reluctant to spend. So if you have the opportunity to take a mentor, to take a course, to buy a book, or to go to a conference, these things are usually very good things to do. And by the way, the fact that you're all here means that you are people who invest in yourself, so that's great. And then the last question I get from a lot of people is, wait, but how do I find a mentor? And first of all, I'll say it's hard, right? Because you need to find somebody who is a good match for you, and it's like dating, right? It's finding somebody who is a good match for you. Look at people around you, and if you see somebody that you think compliments you and you think that you can learn a lot from them, it's perfectly fine to ask them, are you willing to mentor me on these things? Yet there are some platforms where you can find mentors like Meander or TopMate, etc. Better Me is another one. Sometimes big companies, if you work for big companies, they might have mentorship programs where you can just sign up as a mentor or mentee and they do the matching for you. So these are great things to do. And finally, just try. I mean, keep trying, and sometimes you have to kiss a few frogs before you find the prince and that sort of stuff. So it's perfectly fine if the first mentor is not a good fit. Don't give up. Just keep trying. It's one of the best things you can do. And from my own personal experience, this is how I tend to see the path to achieving my goals with and without mentors. So I think that with a mentor, when you get constant feedback and you're responsible for it, and you clarify to yourself what the goal is and how to get there, and there's somebody who keeps you accountable and keeps you focused, the line is a lot more straight than when you just try to do it and you're not really sure, and you keep changing direction, you keep trying things that don't work, and you're not necessarily talking to people who have done this before and have this experience and know how to do it. So I think that it can save you a lot of time and accelerate your growth. And the next point I wanted to talk about is promotions. A lot of big companies, especially companies above a certain size, will have a formal process for promotions. And I think that it's really, really important to understand how these processes work. I see a lot of people who miss out on promotions, or they want to get promoted, they get to the next promotion cycle and they don't get promoted for not very good reasons. And I think that there's some things you can do and you can understand yourself that will help make this process a lot more smoother for you and increase your success rate. So first of all, the first thing you want to understand as much as you can is what is actually the process for promotions in this company, right? And how does it work? Who makes the decision? Who are the people who are involved? Who are the people who are going to sit in the room when the decisions are made and are not necessarily the decision makers, but are people that have a lot of influence? And when these people exist, then try to think about, when you know who they are, what do they know about you and your work? What do they think about you and your work? And I've been in a lot of promotion conversations where somebody is presenting a case, and I'm actually familiar with this person and the work. I think it's a solid case. And somebody in the room raises their hand and say, "Oh, I actually don't know anything about this project. I don't know anything about this person's work. How come, if it's such a good work, why am I not aware of that? If I'm a stakeholder of this." And these are silly conversations to have. Sometimes as a manager, you can still get around it and make the promotion work, but sometimes it becomes very difficult. So help yourself by understanding the process, understanding the dynamics in the room, the people who are involved, and do a little bit of work before that to make sure that the people who need to be convinced are convinced before the conversation actually happens. And it's perfectly fine to have a conversation with your manager in the beginning of the year or the beginning of the half and say, "These are the goals that I set for myself for this half. I think I'm going to do this and that. Are these good goals? Do you think that will qualify?" Right? Don't just leave it to chance, but try to have this conversation before and see if it makes sense. Maybe your manager will say, "No, it doesn't seem right," and you want to know it as early as possible. So, yeah. How are we doing with time? So this is for the theory. I wanted to share some stories from my own personal career, and this is some moments that have sort of shaped how I think about certain things, which hopefully you can relate and learn from. The first one is about relationships. So when I joined Facebook, Vish was our VP of data engineering, and he was my manager. In our first one-on-one, we met. And he showed me this picture of this book that's called Never Eat Alone. And he talked to me about the importance of relationships. And he said that basically, so he told me, "Shachar, you have 3 meals a day, right? Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And you have probably 1 or 2 coffee breaks. And if you take each one of those as an opportunity to spend time with a person you don't know, you will get a chance to meet 1,800 new people a year." Which is amazing. By the way, I don't know what the book is about. He just showed me and said that. So don't read the book and say, "Oh, it's not related," because it may not be. But I like the title. But the idea is that relationships can be very, very helpful, right? Because you don't know when you will need them, but having the right relationship with the right person at the right time can be a game changer for you. And I'll share one story of somebody who's a friend of mine, and when we worked at Facebook, he was an engineering manager in our headquarters in Menlo Park. And one day he just messaged me on our internal chat platform and said, "Oh, I'm visiting London. I would love to meet up for coffee." And it was very early days for me. I didn't know who this person was or why do they want to meet me. But I said, "Yeah, fine, why not? Let's do it." And we met, and he said that he found my name in the internal Facebook pilots group. We had a group for all pilots, and I was sharing some stories about flights. And he saw that, and he wanted to meet. And apparently, he's a very senior flight instructor in the Bay Area. And it was a great connection for me to have, because I fly with instructors sometimes when I get there. So I told him, that's amazing. Next time I come, we'll fly together. And we had a few flights together. And I made it a point that every visit I had to the Bay Area, I would either fly with him or at least have coffee together. And we just become very close friends. And then about one or 2 years later, one of my peers, she was really struggling with her engineering team. She was a data engineering director, and the engineering team she was working with was terrible. I mean, the data they were generating was really bad, and they had a lot of data quality issues. They were not logging the right things, and they were not very responsive. We've all been there. And she was really frustrated to the point that she really wanted to leave that team. She wanted to move on to do something else because she just couldn't fix it. And guess who was the engineering manager for that team? It was Dan. And it's not a person I had a chance to work with or anything like that. We're just friends. But I just messaged him and I said, Dan, what's your team doing? Like, why are they so bad? And he said, oh, I didn't know anything about that. I'm so sorry. Let me see if I can fix it. And he stepped in, and he did. And I think that these are the kind of relationships that you might have, and you never expect them to be useful or helpful for you in your career at any point. But these random people that you meet, if you like coffee and you always meet them at the kitchen making coffee, or you're part of the basketball team and they're part of the basketball team, and all of these sort of random relationships. Smoking, by the way, if you're smokers always connect with each other, and then somehow they know everybody else. So these kind of relationships are going to be transformative for you. So be mindful of that and just proactively try and make new relationships. And I know, by the way, if you're an introverted, sounds, you might be dreading the idea of having lunch with somebody you don't even know. I get that. So don't have five like that every day. Have one a week. Start with one a week. Maybe take your friend with you or somebody else so it feels better. But if you actively invest in that, it will be transformative for your career, honestly. The next story is about the work that nobody wants to do, which there's always work that nobody wants to do, and I think from my experience sometimes it can be the biggest opportunity around you, and people don't realize that. So I joined Pontis. Pontis was a startup that built marketing platform for telcos, and when I joined, they basically I joined the company not actually knowing what is it that I'm going to do, because I met the CTO for an interview, and he was a very special person. He said, look, I don't have any specific role, but I like you. Why don't you join and we'll figure out something to do with you? And I thought, that's cool. Like, I've never seen a company like that. So that's interesting. And I joined, and my wife asked me, oh, that's great. What are you going to do? And I said, I don't actually know. Anyway, so I joined, and I was actually, for the first few weeks, I was looking for something to do. And I realized that the marketing teams have always asked the DBAs to help them with segmentation, so to pull out lists of customers that meet certain criteria so they can run marketing campaigns on them. And the DBAs absolutely hated doing that job. That's not what they signed up to do. They didn't care about that. It was boring. It was very tedious. Like they really didn't want to do this job. So I looked at that and I said, oh, that looks like something I can do, and I'm looking for work, so maybe I can be that person. And I asked the marketing teams if they would be willing to work with me on that. They were over the moon. It must have been the first time that somebody actually wanted to help them, and they said, yes, please. And we started working together, and I made this process a lot more efficient, and I started doing it at a larger scale, and it became something that I do actively. Like, it was becoming a big part of my job. And at some point, my CEO, he reached out to me and he said, look, I don't actually understand what is it that you do, but we need more people like you. So can you start hiring more people and build a team? Because we need more people who can do that. And I've essentially built their analytics team, which was very crucial for the mission and the success of the company. And they didn't know they need a team like that, but taking something nobody wanted to do and expanding that and making it, creating a lot of value through that was very impactful. So whenever you see work that nobody wants to do, think about it, because it might be an opportunity. It may also not be, but sometimes it is. How much time do we have? 10? Being close to the data is your superpower. You're all data people, right? And that's your biggest superpower. And I think that a lot of data people, and it doesn't matter if you're a data engineer or an analyst or a data scientist, a lot of data people just underestimate how important that is. And I wanted to share this story. One of my data engineers on the team was working on ads on FB Lite. For those who don't know, FB Lite is basically a lighter version of Facebook that works on older phones, right, that have less capabilities, and they do a lot of the calculations on server side, and this way they can they can run heavy product like Facebook on very old devices. And Facebook Lite is heavily used in developing countries, and my data engineer was actually working on ads on FB Lite, and they built a dashboard that was basically comparing ads on FB Lite to Facebook Blue, right, regular Facebook. And not only that he built the dashboard, he actually spent a lot of time investigating it because he was curious, right, and he was very interested in the work, and he wanted to understand how ads are going on FB Lite. And then he spotted something interesting. He saw that one of the ad types, the revenue on Facebook was quite a lot, and on FB Lite the revenue was 0. Now, you always expect the revenue on FB Lite to be a lot lower than Facebook, but obviously not 0. 0 is a very specific number. And so he was curious, why would it be 0 for this type of ad? And he kept investigating, and he realized that they never actually enable these types of ads. And so they did some quick estimates, and they realized that it's going to be like a $300 million a year opportunity. So they just enabled that, and it was amazing. And the fact that he was so close to the data, he didn't just build a dashboard and ship it and that's it. He actually spent time understanding the business, understanding the data, being curious, asking all these questions. And I think this is a really, really good way for every data person to grow in their career and to create a lot of value and impact for their company. Don't just be this person who's been asked to, for a report, so they send it over and that's it, right? Take the extra 1 or 2 steps, and you will be amazed by what it can do. Another story, we're getting close to the end, but another story is thinking about the big picture. And again, was a data engineer on my team at Facebook working on catalog. And product catalog is essentially a platform we've built for advertisers who advertise multiple products, right? If you think of Amazon, for example, they have billions of products they advertise on Facebook, and they don't want to just create billions of ads. That's not going to be efficient. So what they do is they upload their entire catalog to Facebook, and then they dynamically generate ads based on signals that they share with us. So this data engineer started working on product catalog. Now, there's 2 ways you can create a catalog: through the API, where you just upload a lot of information, or through the UI, where you just upload like a CSV. If you're a small chocolate shop or something like that, or children clothing, and you have 50 products, 50 items in your catalog, 100 items, you might just upload everything on the UI. So he joined the team, and the first thing he did was to try and create catalogs himself and interact with the product and see how it works. And it was really buggy. It was not working very well. It was getting a lot of error messages. They were all like very confusing. Things were failing with it. He didn't understand why. So he started creating a lot of, reporting a lot of bugs to the engineers and telling them that the product is broken. And they said, oh, the UI is just not a priority for us. And he said, oh, that's weird. Why would it not be a priority? That's how some advertisers create catalogs. So he kept investigating, and then he came to me in one of our one-to-ones, and he said, look, I'm really worried about this team. And I said, why are you worried? And he said, because their goals are just wrong. And I said, oh, what do you mean? And he said, their goal is number of items in catalog. Their top-line goal, this is how they measure success, is number of items in catalog. And if that's what they care about, then they don't care about small advertisers. They only care about the big advertisers, and they're building a product for maybe less than 100 advertisers in the world. And that's not how we do. That's just not how we work here. So I said, oh, okay, that sounds very plausible. What are you doing about it? And he said, oh, so I've already spoken with the engineering manager and product manager and data scientist, and I told them that I think it's wrong, and it's nearly the end of the half, and we're thinking about the goals for next half, and I basically proposed a different goal, maybe like number of items in catalog over number of advertisers or something like that, to take into account the fact that they should care about small businesses. And they did. They took his advice, and their roadmap for the next half was completely different, because you could clearly see that now they care about everybody. So taking a step back and looking at the big picture is so important, especially for data people, and thinking about things like, why do things happen in a certain way? Why do teams care about specific things? Why do they do it in first place, or why are they not doing something? And asking yourself these questions and keep digging into it, I think is extremely important. Cool, we have 4 minutes left. I'll skip saying no, but it's really important. Just say no to everything. So in summary, I think, just to summarize, I think choosing direction in your career and being consistent about it is important, because there's a cost to making changes, right? So it's okay to try different things. It's okay to learn skills that are not part of your core job. But if you want to be a data analyst, be a data analyst, right? And don't be too confused about, should I be a data engineer? Should I be an ML engineer? You know, choose direction and try to stick with it a little bit and see what happens. I think generally it's more healthy. Be smart about how and when you make changes in your career. Remember the S-curves and think about the different stages, and also think about where you are right now and be honest with yourself. Are you still early stages? Are you growing now? Or are you actually flat, and you've been flat for a year? And think about these things and just take that into account. Mentors will help you achieve your goals faster. If you don't have a mentor, consider having one. It doesn't have to be paid. It doesn't have to be formal, but start getting into the habit of having people helping you grow, I think is really, really important. Understand how promotions in your company work. It will make a difference for you. Invest in your relationships. Be close to the data and realize how being close to data is your superpower, and leverage that. And the work that nobody wants to do is a big opportunity. Think about that. It's important to learn how to say no. It's very, very important. We didn't talk about that, but I have millions of stories of people whose careers were slowed down just because they didn't master the art of saying no. And always, always, always look at the big picture. Yeah, I hope that was helpful. Thank you so much. Let's connect on LinkedIn. Feel free to search on thank you. You can scan the QR code or just connect with me, and happy to continue the conversation later.
Thank you, Shachar, for such an incredible session. Unfortunately, we do not have enough time for a Q&A session, but if you have any questions, you can reach out to Shachar during the networking break. We'll be having a coffee break right now. After the break, we have 2 more exciting sessions lined up, so enjoy your break, and we'll see you soon.